The Eagles actually today waived a couple of players, one of which you've heard of before, as this is one of the reasons why Jim Schwartz had such a rough time last year. He had to use Chandon Sullivan, who was a guy that somehow got playing time. He started a game for them last year, and then got released, and then got brought back. So we'll let John kind of talk about those guys. Chris Long is back in the news, which is interesting. I find this whole story with Chris Long to be kind of interesting. But Chandon Sullivan, we hardly knew you there, John.
Well, we knew a little bit too much, I think. Now, Chandon's a nice guy, but he was forced into action and was not ready to play. And he was one of the issues at that point when the Eagles were down to essentially nothing at the cornerback position. They had a ton of injuries in the defensive backfield as a whole. I was just, Chris Long, you mentioned, is going at it with people on Twitter.
Yeah, what's his beef?
I know how that feels. Well, he keeps saying the same thing, and people keep accusing him of trying for a bigger role or trying for more money. I mean, Chris gives money away. It's not about money, number one. Number two, he wants his role from last year. He's not looking for an increased role. And he said these things pretty consistently, and he's told the Eagles to move forward and act as if he's not going to be back. From Philadelphia's standpoint, they don't want to slam the door, so they keep pushing back the roster bonus he's due. Now it's first day of training camp. So that enables the Eagles to look at some of the younger players, Josh Sweat, Joe Osman from last year, Sharif Miller, fourth-round pick this year, and see what they have. But it's pretty evident that unless there's injuries that pile up, and Chris has kind of intimated this behind the scenes, he feels bad because he thinks the only way he's going to be back is if there's injuries, and he doesn't want anybody to get injured. So I absent of him officially saying he's not coming back, he's not coming back.
No, he's not coming back here or not coming back to play?
I don't think he's coming back to play because he loves it here. He loves the role he had here, and he would come back to play for that role. But I think the Eagles are want to go in a different direction. They want Malik Jackson on the field. That's the key. It's not the other defensive ends. They seem to want Malik Jackson on the field in the nickel pass rush. And what that does is that keeps Brandon Graham out at left defensive end. Derek Barnett will be the right end. And that takes away Chris's role of that third down nickel rusher from the left end spot. And if he's not going to have that, he doesn't want to play. Simple as that.
Yeah. And now he had tweeted, as you mentioned, he said in response to random people, he said, "I haven't said a word. Anyone with this take is an exceptional kind of stupid. I've made a decision. I told them in March to proceed like I won't be back when I was told my 2018 role was gone. Defensive end signings, the draft don't affect it. I won't be back unless a real need arises," which essentially, like you just said, sounds like unless they come begging because something happened, he's done.
Yeah, exactly it. And
now he's intimating that they went to him and said, your role is no longer there, right? Is that what he's saying, that they told him?
Well, they went to him and said exactly what I said, and the fact that they want Malik on the field in the nickel rush. They wanted him back. It's not like they wanted to cut him.
No, let's get into that a little bit. You tweeted about this, and so they're saying they want Malik Jackson basically to be a 3-down player?
Yeah, well, now it's a little bit interesting because Tim Jernigan's back as well. So you're going to have a little bit of a mix, and perhaps there's times where if Tim is healthy, he could be sort of an innings eater, so to speak, to use a baseball analogy, maybe take some of those first and second down snaps as a run stuffer, and save Malik for that pass rushing role, which is the strength of his game. So they could go about it as that. But, yeah, I mean, for a large percentage of the time, they want him to be a three-down player with some, obviously, spelling during the game. Maybe Jernigan comes in every 3 series or so. Who knows how they work it. But from their standpoint, they believe their best option, and I disagree with this, because Chris has been tremendous in his role the past 2 years. I think they would be better kicking Brandon Graham inside and keeping Chris Long at left end in the nickel package, but they think differently.
Right. It seems like, so essentially whatever Long was doing last year, they are now going to turn that over to Malik Jackson?
Well, yes and no. As I said, essentially he'll be taking some of that playing time. It's different positions. As I said, if last year Brandon and then later Michael Bennett would kick inside.
Gotcha.
In the nickel.
Oh, right, Michael Bennett.
This year they don't want anybody kicking inside. Obviously, Michael's not here. Brandon, they want him to stay at left end, and Malik would play that defensive tackle position next to Fletcher Cox. So that's why his role is no longer there. And, you know, he played about 60% of the time. That increased as the season wore on, as Derek Barnett got hurt. That role is not there for him. And they wanted him to be a rotational player, but you're probably talking about maybe 30% of the snaps. And it's, from Chris's standpoint, it's too much of a grind to go through it at this stage. He's 34. If he's not enjoying it, and what he enjoys is that third down pass rushing role.
Yeah,
and that's not there for him.
John McMullen with us. Now, he agreed to push back a $1 million roster bonus that was due today until the first day that veterans are required to report to camp in July. What is the thought process behind that move? Who does that benefit?
Well, I think it gives the Eagles a little bit more time to revisit their decision. If they get through spring work and they get a look, remember, this is the first time Malik Jackson has been here. They're looking at him from afar and what he was in Denver and then Jacksonville. Maybe he gets here and they go through spring work and they say, you know what, this is not going to work. We prefer to go back to the plan that we had. We prefer to go back with kicking Brandon inside and letting Chris be that nickel pass rusher off the edge. And you leave the door slightly ajar. You don't have to slam it shut, so there's no reason to slam it shut. It's unlikely that happens because, let's be honest, I mean, there's no pads. There's no real way where you're going to look at Malik Jackson and say he probably can't do it. Mm-hmm. So it's very unlikely, but you might as well keep it ajar in case something happens.
Right, and as you know, guys get hurt all the time leading into camp or in camp, you know, stuff like that. You got the mini camps, as we kind of talked about yesterday, when they're going to be in May. So between May and July, somebody could just tear an ACL or an Achilles doing nothing in a lot of non-contact stuff.
Yeah, Isaiah Crowell in Oakland tore his Achilles. So he's out for the year. I mean, it happens that quickly. There's always injuries in the NFL. There's injuries in off-season work. And that's another reason. If you don't have to slam it shut, you might as well not slam it shut.
Yeah, it makes sense. So you got Brandon Graham, you've got Fletcher Cox, you got Malik Jackson, and I guess Derek Barnett. Does that sound like you're starting 4 up front?
Yeah, that's it. And that's also the 4 in the nickel, and then you'll have the rotational guys. Tim Jernigan, the biggest get back in the middle. We'll see how Hassan Ridgeway fits in. Guy they picked up from Indianapolis for the 7th round pick. And then on the outside, Vinny Curry's back. And Vinny can play inside a little bit as well if he needs him to kick inside. And he got the younger guys, as I mentioned, Sharif Miller, Josh Sweat, DeAndre Hall, Joe Osman, who this coaching staff likes. So, hey, Chris is a big name, though. It's tough to replace that kind of depth and that kind of effectiveness. He has been a great pass rusher for this team over the last 2 years. I kind of question this decision.
And I kind of get to that because do they think Vinny Curry replaces Long?
No, I mean not in that role. Not in that role. I mean, they're essentially saying that they're better with Graham at left end and Jackson inside than Graham inside and Long outside. Vinny is in a different sort of column. He's a rotational end. If you think about 2 years ago when he was the starter at right end and Derek Barnett would come in the nickel rush when he was a rookie, it's sort of going to be the same type of thing, but a little bit reversed in that Derek's going to be the starter and have more snaps, but Vinny will be the guy to sort of spell him.
We're talking football with John McMullen. So you mentioned Osman a couple of times. When you brought him up yesterday, I vaguely remember him from the draft a couple of years ago, or was he an undrafted free agent? And people were saying that he might have been one of those guys that has a shot. That people liked it. He was a sack guy at Central Michigan. And, of course, he was hurt and didn't play, so people kind of forgot him. But between him, Josh Sweat, and the new kid they got, Sweeney from Penn State, do any of those guys have a shot to make any sort of an impact this year?
Well, yeah, I mean, we have to see with Josh Sweat. Remember, he had this significant knee injury that turned him from a potential second-round pick, to fall a little bit, and that was a catastrophic knee injury. It's been a long time. He did that in his senior year of high school, but there's always going to be concern over his knee. Ended last season hurt. He just looks like a pass rusher, though. I mean, he if you create a pass rusher in a lab, it's going to look like Josh Sweat. He's a big, long, lanky guy with the arms and speed off the edge. So he's always been an interesting prospect, but as I said, you always have to be concerned about his health. Osman is kind of the opposite. He doesn't have the size. He doesn't have the range you look for in a pass rusher. But what he was, as you mentioned, was really effective at the college level. It's that high motor guy, never stops. Amazing conditioning. Will just outwork people. And the Eagles coaching staff, they constantly bring him up. And it's very rare with the coaching staff that they bring up people that you don't ask them questions about. They're always volunteering information on Joe Osman, and that sort of raises your antenna that they like him because they're always talking about him. And he was sort of, if you remember Stephen Means during the Super Bowl year, he was the Stephen Means last year. He was the guy on the scout team that got everybody ready, and they always raved about as a practice player. So he's got a chance to take a step forward in year two for him. And also Hall, I mean, that guy was a third-round pick, and he's another one who fits the suit, so to speak. Long, lanky guy. So they have a lot of young bodies at defensive end. Hopefully at least one of them can step up.
Yeah, now, the question that I would have is, after all of this, losing Long and Bennett, are they weaker at that position?
Yeah, I mean, those are good players.
Right, exactly.
Really good players. When Mike was versatile, I mean, he could play at a high level at right end, left end, and inside a tackle. So, but the issue was that, and it was really here, people kind of forget, he was not happy at the beginning of last year because the Eagles were intent on developing Derek Barnett. And before Derek Barnett got hurt, Michael wasn't seeing the playing time that he wasn't necessarily happy. Everything was fine after Barnett got hurt, and he got a ton of reps. But this year, moving forward, Derek's back. They want him to be the starter. the Eagles knew Michael wasn't going to be happy, and they dealt him. So I kind of understand it, but yeah, it's tough to
This isn't
replace
meant
guys like that,
right? And this wasn't meant to be like, man, they really messed that up. But in hindsight, they're not as good at that position as they were last year. I mean, you just can't be losing two guys like that.
No, I agree. The age factors in as well. I mean, you're talking about guys well over 30. In Chris's case, 34. Michael's 32, going on 33. Forget when his birthday is, but so you have to add that into it as well. You know, do you go the Patriots route? The Patriots have always generally thought you give up on a player a year early than a year late, but then again, the Patriots traded for Michael Bennett, so that tells you what they think of him.
Exactly.
But from Chris Long's standpoint, I mean, I'll be honest. I don't get the Eagles thinking. The guy has performed at such a high level. I don't understand why they wouldn't want him back in that role. It's going to be very, very difficult to have the same success in what he was able to do.
John McMullen, Football at 4, at JF McMullen. And then the Eagles added a safety now, Godwin Igwebuike, right?
Igwebuike.
Yeah,
remember Donald Igwebuike, the kicker in Tampa Bay?
From Tampa Bay, right?
That's
I was
his
going to
dad.
say, is it? I was going to say, remember who was there was a D-back from Wisconsin, Jack something or it was in
I know exactly who you're talking about.
He was like a third-round pick, and people were like, "Oh, he would have been a first-round talent if he wasn't such
a." That's true. He would have, and he ripped up his knee.
Yeah,
and I can't think of his name.
Jack
I know exactly who you're talking.
Something similar, right?
Yeah. But this is Donald's son,
the kicker,
the old kicker for the Buccaneers.
I believe he went with a bare foot.
Did he? I don't remember that.
A one-bar barefooted kicker back in the 80s.
He was a pretty good kicker for a short period of time. And this is another guy who was supposed to be drafted. A lot of people had him as like the third, fourth-round pick. Did not get drafted, ended up as an undrafted guy in Tampa, same city as his father, and then went to the 49ers. And played a bunch of games, 5 or 6 games there, mainly on special teams. But Eagles picked him up on waivers, so they'll add him to the mix and back at safety and see if they got anything. But Howie Roseman said, talent gathering season hasn't ended, and that's part of it. You saw the Eagles; they released 3 players today. So when you sign your undrafted free agents, you bring in that class, you generally always have to make some room by releasing certain guys, and that's what happened today with Chandon Sullivan and Asante Brown and Caleb Johnson.
All right, we got more Football at 4 coming up on tomorrow's show. There's a lot of future stuff happening here. We got the mini camps happening. We ended the segment yesterday with that, and we found out it's May 10th, 11th, and 12th is when the Eagles will be on the field.
Yeah, I nailed that.
Yes, mini camp, man, can't wait. You know what's funny?
Mini camp.
Yes, and it's funny because we're at minicamp, and now it's amazing how things get quick real fast because now we're like 2 years removed from that Super Bowl. Like you're going into that second season after winning a Super Bowl, and things get a little different all of a sudden,
Yeah, and the age is part of it, and we've talked about the small draft classes, 2 consecutive years. I don't think you can do that any longer. I think this is sort of it. This is the tipping point. And the Eagles see that window is open. They're going to go do everything possible to win another Super Bowl this year. And then you're going to have to sign the contract with Carson. You're going to have to start getting younger. That's just how it works.
Right. This is when it's like once you hit a certain age in life, when you start to get held accountable, right? Now this is the Eagles. They're 2 years after that Super Bowl. We're going to start holding you accountable for stuff. Although that happened immediately.
I think plenty of people kind of held them accountable last year.
Right.
Really, probably too quickly.
Right. That was immediate.
They were killing them. when they were rolling out Chandon Sullivan, And people like that, and Crevan LeBlanc got here from Detroit and had him out on the field 5 days later. People were killing him already. Yeah. It was kind of amazing.
You remember? Okay, you're an NFL. You cover the league. You remember Dante Rumpf? He was on the Hard Knocks with the Atlanta Falcons.
Yeah. All
right, he's playing for the Blackjacks. He's coming up right after you here.
The Atlantic City Blackjacks. When's the opener?
They played the Soul last week, a 48-41 loss, and their home opener is this.
That's a bad job by me.
Yeah, their home opener is this Saturday at Boardwalk Hall. I will invite you as my personal friend if you want to come.
I might do that. Yeah. I want to see a little Blackjacks football.
Yeah, Boardwalk
the inaugural
Hall.
Blackjacks.
Hey, you only get to see the first game once, man.
That's true.
Yeah,
That's
they played in Philly Saturday against the Soul. They lost 48-41, and a good game. I watched the game. I listened to the game on the radio with Nick Costco on the call with Coffee Jones. They did a great job on the call, and then the second half I watched on TV with Lou Tilley on the call.
Lou Tilley.
Yeah.
That is hey, the Soul are a AFL powerhouse.
Yes.
So your first game ever, 48-41, that's pretty good.
Yeah, Dante Rumpf played with the Falcons. He was on the Hard Knocks show back then. University of Kentucky, I believe, if memory serves. He is a member of the Blackjacks.
Yep.
All right.
Wish Dante good luck.
I will. And he's coming up next right after John here on Football at 4 on 97.3 ESPN. All right, man. We will catch up again tomorrow.
All right. Thanks, Mike.
All right. Football at 4, as always, here on the Sports Bash.